Good evening. I want to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for coming to join us for our regular board meeting. We're going to start with our pledge of allegiance, and Nathan's going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And next we'll have our roll call attendant, Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Present.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Watts,
Present.
President Levesque,
Present.
Director Knapp,
Present.
Student Advisor Nichols.
Here.
Student Advisor Reed. Superintendent Sweeting.
Present.
Next, we're going to have our presentation portion of our program. Oh, first we need our approval of our regular meeting minutes. Sorry. So excited for our presentation. Do we have a motion to approve our meeting agenda, or is there any changes anyone would like to make?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
I'll second. Been moved by Director Watson, seconded by Director Knapp to approve the meeting agenda as presented. Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Yay.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque,
Yes.
Director Knapp.
Yes. Our agenda is adopted, and now we get to have our presentation portion of our meeting. And the first item we have is our new crosswalk at Post Middle School. And we would like to welcome Nate Nearing up to the podium. He's our Snohomish County Council Member District 1. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I
Councilmember
appreciate it.
Nearing.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate your time, school board directors and Superintendent Sweeting. And I also appreciate all the great work you're doing on behalf of our communities and all the kids in Arlington School District. At Snohomish County, we have a fund set up for each district to partner with public entities using real estate excise tax dollars. And so I had a couple of constituents from Arlington reach out regarding a crosswalk issue at the middle school and asking whether there was anything the county could do to partner with this. And so I had reached out to the city's public works department as well as the school district, and both super responsive and just really appreciate the great partnership on this. We were able to get some of the funding to get this project going, and really excited to see this happen. Again, just so appreciative of you and your staff's partnership with the city of Arlington. So great team effort here. I do have a check here to present.
The giant check.
Yeah, that's right. We got the giant check. So so thank you each again. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing this get completed.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Do you want us to stand up?
Yeah.
Oh, whatever.
It could be right there.
Like, where we are, or do you want us down there?
Yeah, maybe that would be easier right there.
I love the big generous check. Check.
Maybe we could stand in front of the-
Give you that routing number for that
Yeah,
one.
right.
Yeah, stand in front of the owl. So,
In front of the owl.
yeah,
Lock it.
yes. Wonderful.
I'll let you all.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna stand, yeah, maybe behind.
There we go.
There you go. Perfect, there you go. That's good. Okay, right here.
Composer photos.
Perfect, right here, please. Nice big smile, hold it, let's do one with the flash, make sure. That's great, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Get this big money.
Yeah. Got a big slot to put that in the bank.
Yep. It's great to see you. Yeah, it's great to see you.
Not sure where this starting.
I think I like it right there.
Great night, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, night.
That concludes the presentation of the new crosswalk at Post Middle School. Next up on the agenda is our Arlington High School student presentation, Biomed Mobile Medical Labs. And I'd like to welcome Marilee Herman, our principal at Arlington High School, along with several helpers.
Yes.
And would you like to introduce your student?
Of course, yes. Yes, you bring assistant. There you go. Okay, so this is our assistant.
Yes, we like that.
Yes, but Elliot and Caitlin have come today. They are seniors this year. Just crazy, you guys. It's just crazy. So biomedical science, I'm gonna do the intro and then they're gonna tell you all the cool stuff. I'm gonna put you in. Okay, good plan. Big deal with biomedical science is for kids that are interested in the medical field in some capacity. It's also part of a sequence. And you guys know there's many different graduation pathways for kids now. It's not just the SBAC test anymore. And this fulfills one of those pathways. By completing this, they get their CTE credit. It's also a third year of lab science. So you're headed to college. It's a great way to go. And then it also connects to our health science pathway, right? Human body systems, that sort of piece. One of the really cool things that they get to do as they learn is apply their learning to medical cases. So today I went in to get their poster and there's a medical case set up for them tomorrow with a body laying in the corner. I about had a heart attack because the lights were off. It's fine, well staged. In fact, it looks much like the one you see in their upper corner there, but the lights were off. Freaked me out. So, there's also a really cool pickle one. Did you guys see the pickle one?
Yeah.
Okay, I won't do any spoilers, but all of the pickles have been killed in different ways and they have to figure things out. And sometimes they have a little baby pickle in there and there's a whole thing and they got to diagnose stuff. Yeah, heads up. Dissect your pickle. Anyway, so they do a ton of cool things to actually apply, and a big part of that is looking at the ethics, right, of their decision. So why do we do this? How do you make those choices? Really tons of critical thinking, innovation, those pieces. Next slide for me, please. Oh, I have a clicker. I'm really bad with clickers. Okay. Usually I go backwards. So this unit is part of outbreaks and emergencies, and in this class all year. They had to figure out how to set up a mobile lab. And when we think about a lot of the emergencies that are happening now, right? These units are going out constantly, right? So very, very real, practical. They got a hypothetical scenario. There were a couple different choices that they could work with, and they had to determine how to use their medical staff, what medicines to have on hand, right? Like what's going to be the most useful. You can't have everything. The size, how you organize it, what the best facility would be. Do I bring a bus? Do I bring a tent? Do I, what's the best for this scenario? And then what devices or equipment, because can't bring all the magic, right? So we have to do what we can. So they had to define their criteria for triage, right? We all know that's kind of the big decision, right? Do I serve you first or last, right? And then determine what ethical issues were connected to that, which I find the most fascinating, what you guys are doing. You did a great job telling me about it. So they proposed their strategies, they worked with a team, and then they did presentations to their class and had a gallery walk to scope it out. Here's a sample, and I'm gonna let them explain a real one to you, but several different pieces, research sources, kind of the whole piece as they went through. And you can see some samples of design, how they would triage, what equipment, how they'll use their staff. You had what, 4 staff members? Yeah, 4 medical staff. Okay. So I will let them explain their scenario, their choice, why you did what you did. And then we'll go from there.
I can start. Oh, thank you. So this is our medical bus, and it takes place in a building has collapsed in an urban area during a rush hour time. So of course, it would be really hard to set up a tent or something really close to the scene. So a bus was also kind of this will be fun to try to work stuff in because it's a different shape. It's not like a rectangle or square. So we decided to choose the bus as our mobile facility. And this is the blueprint of the areas right here. So we have our recovery area where after they've been partially treated, they'll just go sit there until they're actually stable enough to leave the bus. We have waiting and triage where if we can fit it, they can come onto the bus and they will be assessed. And then either they'll get kicked out because they're not priority right now, or they will be triaged and wait for actual treatment. We have treatment up here, trauma up here. Then there's a little computer over here, medical supplies, and the non-urgent care, because there's 2 seats up in the very front where we can just place someone there if we just need someone to sit down for a little bit. And then over here is actually the specific stuff. So we have some beds, a bench. There's a patient up in the passenger seat, and then there's cabinets and a fridge over here. And of course, what is in the cabinets? We brought basic pain medication, and then stuff that will help with allergic reactions and overdoses, because you never know what could happen while you're on the field. And then we have O2 tanks, IVs, stretchers, heart monitors, and something to bring you back alive if your heart happens to stop. Of course, the bus isn't actually meant to like completely treat anyone. It's supposed to just keep people stable enough until they're ready to leave or be taken to an actual care facility where they can get extensive treatment. Then we just got some other basic stuff like gauze, saline, gloves, masks, and then some like food stuff that can help with like blood sugar, like granola bars and juice boxes. You could go next.
So on our medical bus, we were told to have 4 medical staff to help treat 4 hypothetical patients. So we have a paramedic, an emergency medical physician, triage nurse, and an IV therapist, which we thought was the best combination of professionals in order to treat. So a paramedic would go out there and like help like actually physically get the patients and like direct them like go to the bus, go to the right when you enter. And then an emergency medical physician who's basically there to help diagnose and treat anything for the patients that come out, like basically kind of like you have like a your PCPs like that at a clinic that you would like have, like they're there for an emergency situation. And obviously a triage nurse, because in an emergency, we need to know who to treat first. So they're the person that when patients come onto the bus, that's who they see first, the triage nurse, so they can tell whether they're an urgent patient or not so urgent. And we have an IV therapist because we have a lot of saline IVs that we're going to use, especially since we want to make sure that our patients are stable. And the most important thing is to make sure that their blood is in the right condition. And with our hypothetical patients, we have patient 1, who's a 42-year-old who was in a car crash and he has a headache, stiff neck, and nausea. And patient 2, who's a 17-year-old who says his arm hurts after he got hit by a woman on a bike, and he doesn't have any bones that are broken visibly and no wounds. And then patient 3, who's a 28-year-old female who was unconscious after debris landed on her head. And patient 4, who's a 37-year-old female who I think
What does it?
so she had difficulty breathing and she had debris in her eye, wasn't able to open it. So in this scenario, we were supposed to establish, so since we're like a volunteer emergency medical facility, we're basically supposed to have outlined what our capabilities as a medical facility are. So basically there's an emergency, we come to the scene and we're able to do this and this effectively, and we're able to like do this. So basically on our bus, we're able to carry 5 patients comfortably. We have 4 beds and a bench that we can make into a bed. And then urgently, we could probably fit about 8. And our purpose is to get there and give any first aid treatment to any patients that need it immediately and sustain any urgent patients while we transfer them to a better medical facility. So we have a patient route. So basically, we're supposed to direct or outline, you can't really see very well from this distance, but we're basically outlining where one patient would go as they come through the facility and get through the treatment. So we chose patient 2. He comes in and sees the triage nurse, and the triage nurse is like, how his arm hurts. So he sits in waiting for a little bit. And then once we're available, we bring him up to the driver's seat because he doesn't really need to lay down. So we bring him up and we give him some of the juice boxes, the blankets and the granola bars that we have, and also an ice pack because we're just like that. And the next section is, in my opinion, the most interesting section is the triage. So where we prioritize the 4 patients. So here it says that we prioritize patient 3 because she's obviously unconscious, took severe damage to the head. And that's obviously something that needs to be treated immediately, and she can be very unstable and things can go south very quickly. And the second patient we prioritize with patient 1, because nausea after a car crash can be a sign of a concussion, which I thought was interesting when we had the little gallery walk. It's like, not everyone said that. I was like, oh, we do it wrong. I don't know. And then our third priority is obviously patient 4. Because they're not extremely urgent. It's not like they're gonna like start like having a heart attack or something, or like start like lowering their pulse. Like they just have trouble breathing. So as long as we give them an oxygen tank, they'll be okay. And then patient 1, he's in the, or no, is it patient 2? It is patient 2. Patient 2, he's in the passenger seat with his juice box, having a great time. And then we also have to describe our treatment process. So we're basically describing our intake, our
I'm supposed to remember the word either.
So it's intake,
Yeah.
triage. And I think discharge or transfer.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Yeah, so basically intake is basically how we get them to the bus. And we had equipment necessary that would help them or help us get them on the bus. So obviously we have stretchers. You can just walk on the bus and there's also a wheelchair thing. It's not very. well
There's a
pointed out.
little black square.
It's a black square. It's for wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And so that's our way of intake is we basically have different methods to help patients get on. And then basically get them to waiting or triage or whether they need to get immediately to a bed. That's with our triage nurse and our emergency medical physician. And then our discharge and transfer is basically knowing whether we are able to immediately treat them and just like let them off the bus. And so basically, once we have a patient who's like well treated and who's well treated and doesn't really need anything else from us, we basically drop them off at a safe place away from the destruction. And then for a transfer, we basically maintain their condition on the bus. So like patients 3 and 1 who need to be monitored, we transfer them to the hospital since we can't give them as much treatment as they really need on the bus, so we get them to the hospital. And then patients 1 and 4 is okay. Or 2 and 4.
It's always 2. I keep forgetting about him.
So patients 2 and 4 with their dust in the eye and like trouble breathing, we can keep watching that and maybe bring it to the hospital if we think it's necessary. Patient 2 being the strong.
Yeah, I think that was everything. I mean, yeah, like when it comes to like ethics, the only like ethical thing really was triaging patients, because I mean, everything's like subjective to like how it looks like from like one person's perspective versus another, which is like why people who chose the exact same scenario as us triage patients in like different ways, which is why like patient 1, which his first thought when Elliot was like looking stuff up about this, he was like, oh, he might have a concussion, whereas other people thought he wasn't like urgent at all, so they triaged him later in the thing, and other people thought like patient 2 was more urgent, even though there was no outward signs of like bone breakage or bleeding. He just had a sore arm. So yeah, that's like where it comes down to like just personal like morals and ethics, yeah. That's it.
Yes. Questions for Keely?
Do you find yourself running through scenarios like in your life outside of this class? No.
It's this class is at 8 a.m. in the morning,
Yeah.
so I'm only partially there sometimes.
Do you guys want to go into the medical field?
Oh, I do, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to get into?
I want to go to pharmacology.
I mean, part of it, like I used to be kind of interested
Okay.
in medical things. I definitely took it this year because I did a CTE credit.
Got it,
But
okay.
That's a secret.
I will say, as a long-time critical care nurse, you are right on the money on the triage. I would say a CCU nurse instead of an IV.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, thank you, that's awesome.
And difficulty breathing is important.
And difficulty breathing is important.
And if you've seen these famous people before, they are all in our band.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
they're all-
and
all of them
cross
are quite
country.
famous. Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I remember.
Yes, we've moved to the next season. Yes.
Check
All right.
There's a
any other
wonderful,
questions?
wonderful
Thank you.
presentation.
Yeah, it's great.
Nicely done.
Very
Yes,
articulate.
thank
And now you know
you.
there's a cool scene set up at school, if you want to come check it out.
I'm very curious about the pickle.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to spoil it for that, but I can tell
Okay.
you all about it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hands are flying. We're so excited. Right, next up on our agenda for tonight is our approval of the minutes, and we've got regular meeting minutes from January 13th, and then our special joint meeting minutes with Lakewood from January 22nd. Do we have any changes anyone would like to make to the January 13th minutes, or do we have a motion to approve them as presented?
Make a motion to toss them as presented.
It's been moved by Director Kelly and seconded by Director Knapp to approve the regular meeting minutes from January 13th. Clerk. Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque. Yes. Director Knapp. Yes. Any changes suggested for the special joint meeting minutes with Lakewood on January 22nd, or a motion to approve them as presented?
Make a motion, we approve the meeting minutes from January 26th.
All second.
Been moved by Director Knapp and seconded by Director Watts to approve the special joint meeting with Lakewood School District minutes from January 22nd. Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque,
Yes.
Director Nell.
Yes. Thank you. Those minutes are approved as well. Next up, we have set a time aside for the public comment portion of our meeting. There's no one signed up in advance. No one in the audience now. We will move on to our consent agenda. There's budget and enrollment reports, personnel report, warrants, out-of-state KHS area field trip, Joey Tetrick Foundation donation agreement, a preschool inclusion champions grant, batting cage contract, Lake Washington Institute of Technology interlocal agreement, our annual review of district comprehensive safe school plan outline, and our teachers out of field report. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from our consent agenda for further review and discussion? Or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda as. I'll second.
It's been moved by Director Watts and seconded by Director Kelly to approve the consent agenda as presented. Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque,
Yes.
Director Nell.
Yes. Thank you. The consent agenda is approved as presented. And next up, we have our new business portion of our meeting. And the first item is our report of donations approved by our superintendent for January.
So in January, I approved a donation from SVLC Parent Club for concrete for the installation of the basketball court that we heard about before and did some approvals at $2,565.90.
Nice.
So kudos to that club. That's very generous of that.
And you usually send a card.
We always send that.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you to have my faithful team. Next up is our financial highlights of our current budget. I would like to welcome Gina Zutnorth, our Executive Director of Finance, did I say that right?
You did.
Financial Services. Welcome, Gina.
Hello. So we're getting our presentation up here on the screen. And I'm happy to report out to you on the latest financial highlights of our current budget as of December. We have closed out the months of November and December. Last time I came before you, I was sharing where we were at as of October, and then we'll look forward to see kind of where fund balance is going. So now we're through December, and I always start out with just to rehearse and remember all of these positives, because when we talk about our challenges, it's rough. So let's start with the positive. Four-year educational programs and operations levy. We can never, ever forget the full magnitude of that and the approval of that by our voters, the continued community support of that as a major component of our funding. We have our 2024 capital levy as well. That really helps us be able to keep our buildings up and maintain major improvements and things that have to happen to those over the course of time. Our enrollment increase, we have 75 students more than budget. That's more than we planned. And the translation for that on the finance side of the house is that will be more revenue for us. And that is a very needed thing to have coming down the pipe. Our fund balance is projected to increase. So that's still a positive. We have to see that through to make that happen by the end of this fiscal year. But it is an indicator that we have taken actions to adjust our financial picture and make changes and turn the trajectory. Our financial indicator score with OSPI also is projected to show that change and go towards the more positive. And I will show you that picture soon of what the OSPI financial indicator tool is looking like. And we've looked at it before, but in the context of this conversation. So our challenges, we've revisited this together often. And so I know that the board knows that these programs are the most prevalent of the areas in our district where there are state funding gaps. So special education, food nutrition services, and bus services. are the areas where the funding and the way that those are provided for by the state are not keeping up with the costs of operating those programs. And budget reductions were made during the 23-24 and 24-25. So we're working to rebuild our fund balance, and we have taken action. We're talking about these challenges, but we're not sitting back saying, woe is me, or goodness, everyone has it. We are taking action to make changes, and it's just staying the course, because it does and it will take a long time to actually see the outcomes of the things we've been doing for the past few years. So working to rebuild that fund balance, and it's not without having to do interfund loans. So that had to do it last year, and that is a reality even more so for this year. So we have had to do that during our low months, and especially we will have to do it during the major low point, which is every year in June is our lowest point. Here's our OSPI financial indicators tool score. Now, we've been looking at this off and on throughout different months of presentation. And interesting enough now, OSPI has actually updated for 23-24, and they just sent something out saying that that's going to be posted up there on their website. But we have been looking at it before they updated it, because I provided the numbers, I took the numbers and figured it out. And so you've had that information, and that's a good thing. So it's not going to be a surprise to you when that tool goes up there. But it does show that we still are at a score that is, as of that fiscal year, 1.50, and you need to have a score of 1.75 in order to be not considered on financial warning. That is not binding conditions. That is not any of the other official things that might happen if you were in a binding condition situation. But it is a tool that management can use, that the public can use to take a look and see what do you have and how do you compare to other districts. So interesting enough, you can see that there's other districts that are also on the financial warning score. So, and it's been on the uptick. So back in 2019-20, there was only one district that was on that low criteria score. 2021, 3 districts. 21-22, 5 districts. And now in 22-23, boom, it is more than triple. And I counted 19, but now that the updated tool is out there, I count 18. And there's still 18 districts on it in 23 on the financial warning score.
Wondering if you happen to have any additional knowledge about if the districts that started with that financial warning, if they were able to pull themselves out, and these are new districts going into
Some
that
have
category?
two years in a row, some have pulled out, and some are new. Yeah, so you can see on there, on OSPI's tool, you can see all the history for 5 years, I think, of who was where, all throughout the whole state, 295 districts. So I did extrapolate for 24-25, the year we're in, just using budgeted numbers. And I get a better score. I get a score that has us out of financial warning. So that's just using what the budgeted numbers were at the beginning of the school year, what the numbers were when the board adopted our budget. So it will change depending on where we actually come in at the end. A new tool that I see that is out there is the state auditor's office is now also publishing some things on their own accord for all governments. And so I took it upon myself to take a peek at that. And if you want to know more about that, the website or the link reference, you can go look there. It's on the state auditor's website. But out of the 295 school districts, 75% of those, more than 75% of those have cautionary or concerning indicators. Going deeper in Snohomish County, 14 school districts, 12 of them in the concerning, 1 cautionary, and 1 good. So, the largest measure that's driving that
Good.
is the declining fund balance trends, not just us, but others as well. Combined with it being a low level. Because you can have a high level of fund balance and be in a planned spend down, and you're gonna have a declining fund balance. But if you also have that declining fund balance and you're going to critically low levels. And those 2 things together are major indicators, yeah. And again, this is not to say, oh, well, we can't help it. It's showing the context across the whole horizon within school district funding, school district, state funding for schools, and to say again that we are doing and taking actions to make changes.
I was just saying, would this be, this kind of documentation, could we provide that as some kind of a synopsis to our legislators? Because I think this is very succinct. And we're talking about Arlington within Snohomish County, which is a couple different groups of legislators. I understand it's not just D10 or D39. But I think it's very powerful what you're saying. So it's we're in good company, if there is such a word. We're with company who we're not alone. And this is something we're seeing with a range of district sizes. I'd be curious wherever it is, kind of know where Marysville's at, right? But that's big news, and it's alarming, and it's something else than just we need more funding for MSOC or special ed. This is, hey, here's our budget. This is what we're not meeting the needs, and it's not necessarily going to change once we get the blessing in September 25, 26, right? It's a scary trend.
I think this is information that you as a board member, myself as a superintendent, can have when we're talking with our legislators.
Okay.
To have perspective, that is just not 1 district or 2 districts.
Right.
This is all but
Encompassing, or, yeah.
all but 1, and so there's a systemic problem here
Mhm.
across the state, in our county, for the way that schools are funded.
Right, but even that other one, a couple slides ago, when I think you had it more on the macro level, this is across the state, right?
That's
Yeah.
the whole state.
I mean, if you go
This is Snohomish County.
orange to the 2, I still see cautionary as being, like, again, it'd be neat to know, and maybe we could get the data, be curious where pre-COVID, things were different, but
They didn't have.
This is the new tool.
oh, we didn't even have the tool.
No,
They had the other one, though, they
Yeah.
had,
this one's,
that one.
Okay.
but there you have sort of the history.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know, it seems extremely powerful.
It does tell the.
Does
perspective.
the state auditor's office do any sort of like advocacy work? This might be a weird question, like with the state?
No,
No. Okay.
and there are and could be becoming so many sources of places that are publishing data
Mhm.
that can become difficult to then say, let me test those numbers. Where did you get those?
Mhm.
And be
Gotcha.
sure that they don't have things that are wrong. So that's not the function of the state auditor's
Right.
office. And even the tool itself, that they would put that kind of data out and represent that
Mhm.
is a unique action on their part.
Do they share the schools, districts that fall under each
You
category?
can see.
We're
Yep.
in
It would be
So if
interesting
you
to see
wanna
at what
play
cost
around,
they got to
yeah.
good on what they had to cut to get there.
Yeah.
Are there
Or I
larger
wonder what
districts?
a county looks like, or a water district looks like, or
Mhm.
a college, or any of those. So because they're all there. It's not just school district.
Are the larger school districts struggling as much as we are, or?
There's I know exactly a few that are sizable that are struggling.
I think Seattle's.
Some of the big,
Yeah.
I want to say some of the big 5 are probably,
And how about
struggling.
Spokane? I'd be curious about Spokane.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
that's
it was.
been very alarming. That's,
I just, it's interesting that you give us this type of information, right? I know you give us the really good details and nuts and bolts, but that's, it highlights that the problem is very widespread. And,
when McCleary happened, then there was predictions then, when that lawsuit was done, that this would happen. That's. we're
Yes.
saying-
So you think it could be a direct result of that decision is leading us to this? Yeah,
And it was only staved off for a while because of the infusion of all of the
right,
aid
right.
during the pandemic.
That was the bubble, and now the bubble's gone, and now we're left to.
Now, reality.
Deal with the real.
Remember about 4 years ago, you gave the projections of what the funding was gonna be, how there was gonna be more expenses and less money and like,
Intersection.
that doesn't look good. And it's-
No,
So we've known for a while.
yes, and we keep looking at it, and I apologize if sometimes it feels redundant, repetitive. But I feel this way, it's best for what, oh, yes, this was said. And, or if a public, but outside our community, outside of this room is listening, then they can get that much more education of what it is, the whole picture is that we've been talking about. Our fund balance, again, here's where we're at for December. And you see that we have gone down below that into the negative. That lower line is our 24-25 fund balance. We started with 1.2 million. And that is quite obviously at that level, not sufficient to carry us through our low months. And so in that case, we're lucky that we can turn to our capital projects fund, and certainly knowing that we have the resources that will be coming to pay capital projects back with interest to make capital projects whole. And we are still anticipating and projecting to be with 2 million around there by the end of the fiscal year, which is an increase. That means we are proving that we're going the right direction, at least for that year, and that we must have the fortitude to continue to do those kinds of cost tough decisions to stay going the right direction. And we're talking about those interfund loans, just quick summary back to the resolution 2413 came to board, and we authorized for ourselves to up to 3 million, knowing that it's probably going to be a little bit this month and a little more this month, and that's come true. So November interfund loan was 589,000. December interfund loan was 327,000, and we'll continue to have to utilize that a little bit in January, a little bit in February. I think that March and April, when we get our new influx of tax dollars, and apportionment coming in at a higher level because of our increased enrollment. They're just now catching up to true that up to, okay, we got this many more students, okay, we calculate that we may have enough in March and April, maybe even be able to pay some back. But we will still be coming to you for a future request for an interfund loan, reassess, recalibrate, knowing we're going to need to ask for it, but it'll be a bigger amount for those low months. And again, resources through the end of the fiscal year will be enough to pay that back with interest.
We do start collecting, in this new year coming up, the increased levy amount. And then this month, today or soon, we will see what our apportionment is for this year with the 75 additional students and so.
And then later in the year, we will know more about how much special education safety net we may qualify for, be eligible for, and to claim, but that's not for a while yet. We did put in a claim for some transportation program safety net money for special passengers, meaning students experiencing homelessness or special education students where foster students, that is a higher cost for transporting them with their individual routes. And so we received some of that funding last year, and we hope to receive some of that this year, and that will help our financial picture as well. Every little bit helps. And I always include this slide here to revisit, and then if somebody's looking at the presentation from that is not in this room, it again gives the background that it's not just a, hello, how did we get here? We've been tracking and monitoring, and the financial management that we've been exercising over the course of the past 4 years. It's not just what you're doing during, when the times are easy, when there's a lot of funds, and it's how you're managing as well and planning when times are tough. And this is definitely a picture of times being tough, so, and we're making changes, so. Is there any questions?
No, I would just, I don't know what the timeline is always like when we have legislator visiting our campuses, but I would definitely make that some talking points. It seems a little bit different than what, just saying MSOC or special ed, I feel like that's real. It's a different, I don't think I have quite, I mean, I know Gina always steers us in that, but it was a very good synopsis, and we're one of many. And I think pointing in a little bit more on that might also reinforce our problems in the funding as a district.
I just want to say thank you, Gina, for keeping us informed and up to date on even the scary and bad stuff. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina.
Next up is our adoption of our 25-26 enrollment projection. I'd like to welcome Brian Lewis, our
Sure.
Director of Operations. Executive. You have it, Brian. And this one has a student advisory vote on it. Nathan will weigh in on this one.
False. There's nothing in there that I can. Good evening. I wanted to take a moment and talk with you about why the slides you're going to see tonight are different than what was published last week. Prior or at the moment of board publication, I received some feedback from my colleagues regarding the numbers that were presented, and I had to update those. So what you're going to see tonight is based on those updates. And it's good news because the post enrollment preview last time showed a decrease between this year and next year of 40 students. And with those changes, those updates, a decrease to now 21 students. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful, because as important as the change in the student population is where that population change is occurring. So it will have some meaning for us. So this is a standard slide, and the slides I'm going to present here are pretty standard. I'm going to touch on them very briefly. So the number that we're looking at tonight is the average annual full-time equivalent, which is the average of students enrollment in the district for the 10-month period from September through June of each year. And so just quick shorthand, if a student is enrolled full-time, they count from September through June, they count as a 1.0 FTE. And full-time enrollment is enrolled for a full slate of classes throughout the day, or the equivalent of 5 hours and 33 minutes of seat time in the school. The other number you may hear in regards to enrollment is headcount. That's really more relevant to facilities related issues. We want to make sure that we've got a number of seats adequate for students in the building at their max level, because you can't divide a student or a body of person in half. So while they may be represented, even if they're here only half a day, they may be reported as a half an FTE to OSPI for enrollment. Their whole body is there in the building. So we have to make sure we've got adequate space available for that maximum number throughout the day. So I'm not going to talk about headcount anymore tonight. This is all going to be focusing on annual average FTE. Here's the definition provided by WAC. Again, this is attached to the presentation, so we've been through this before. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Factors that influence enrollment, the number of births within a geographic area is the prime indicator of enrollment in the future. A student that's born in the Arlington school, there are two parents that reside in the Arlington School District. Generally, we see 80% of those students 5 years later when they kindergarten. We might see them before for a preschool type of situation, but generally we see them in kindergarten for the first time 5 years later. 80% of the students are born here. Transitions. This is really relevant in terms of the weighted average methodology. We're not proposing to use the weighted average methodology at this time. So I'll spend a moment on this, and that transitions are the changes in student population between specific grade levels like K to 1. We usually get more students in the first grade than we had in kindergarten. For whatever reason, families don't enroll their student in our school. They may be here, they may be attending a private program. They generally, if they're not here with us in kindergarten, they may be with us, more likely to be with us in first grade. Construction, there is a relationship between the construction of residences in the district, not necessarily business or manufacturing or warehousing. Structures like that don't necessarily correlate to enrollment in the district. It's primarily residential construction. Mobility, that describes the tendency of a student to move into the district or outside of the district. Again, it's not really going to have much of an effect on the enrollment estimate that we're using right now. Withdrawal from school and pandemic, we saw huge effects from this. And I'll show you the numbers here in just a few minutes. It was quite an impact on the district during COVID and the year following as well. So these are the three methodologies that we use. April roll-up, we estimate where we're going to be in April of this school year and assume that those kids are going to be showing up in September of next year in the next class up. It does, again, this is a straight roll-up. It doesn't take into consideration any changes that may occur between grades K1 or 8 or 9, and 5, 6 is another big one as well. The weighted historical average takes into consideration those transitions. It also looks at changes throughout the student population throughout the school year. So there are some grade levels that we know are going to remain static. It's primarily middle school grades. Elementary grades, which generally increase throughout the year in a small amount. And high school, there's definite decline. It usually happens around this time, semester break. Students stop attending school for whatever reason at this time. The last methodology, OSPI cohort survival. This is what OSPI provides to us. They calculate it when they're looking at our enrollment into the future for specific purposes like state match. They rely on the OSPI cohort survival. So there's two aspects we need to keep in mind when we're talking about enrollment for next year, the projecting enrollment, volatility and conservativeness. Volatility is changes in population, and the cohort survival methodology is more sensitive to that. A small change, the model assumes that a small change in the current year is going to continue in following years, and it's going to be bigger every year after that. Same true, that applies to both declines or increases in enrollment. The weighted historical average is generally the least volatile in terms of, and it also provides us some conservativeness in terms of the estimates. So it has been what we've relied upon in the past. Things are different now. I'll show you the chart again here in just a second. So we're recommending the April roll-up model for projecting enrollment. There's a couple of reasons for this. Is that you can see on this table, and I want to point out to you the structure of this table. The enrollment methodology is the first line, the school year is the second line, basic ed enrollment, actual budgeted basic ed enrollment, difference between budgeted and basic ed enrollment. If it's in brackets, it's a negative. If it's not in brackets, it's a positive. In the difference and percentage wise, my goal personally and professionally is to be within 2%. And if we're over 2% and it's a positive, then that's more acceptable. If we're over 2% and it's a negative, that's not good. Because what this means is that we've made obligations, employment obligations, based on the number of students that we're projecting will be in the school buildings. And the state provides funding for us based on the number of students. So if we have more kids or fewer kids showing up than we budgeted for, then we've obligated costs that are not supported by the state. We have to eat that local levy money. So that's the structure of the chart. And you can see here until 2020, we were 2.4% under budget. We ended in March, basically, of that year. And the state let us continue to count enrollment using whatever number we had in March and assuming that would carry forward into the rest of the school year. In 2021, 2022, we had a very significant decline from budget. We used the weighted average model up until this time, or through this time. And we had a 6.8% negative difference between basic ed and actual enrollment. In some ways, we were lucky in that we had a cushion of federal funds to help us absorb that, but we still paid the cost for it. 2022, 2023, we changed to the April roll-up methodology, and our enrollment estimate became more in line with that 2%. And again, we're in the positive as far as the difference. These are smaller numbers than we experienced in the past as far as positives, but it's not a negative number. So we're being funded for students that are actually here and that we made contractual obligations for. Yes.
And was it weighted average the middle one, if I remember correctly?
Weighted average is in the middle. It's the Goldilocks. It's just right
Yeah,
until
it is.
until it's not.
Yeah, it looks like April roll-up's been. a nice-
If roll-up's been working for us. So this is meaningful to us because again, we staff based on the enrollment projection. And if our enrollment estimate is low and we have more students than we anticipated, then we may be in a position where we've got to do some hiring in September. If our enrollment estimate is higher than what actually shows up, then again, we're eating that cost out of general fund. And with the position our fund balance is in right now, I think it's to our benefit to be as conservative as we possibly can in regards to our enrollment estimate. So on to the estimate. Bottom line, we're anticipating a decrease of 21 students, which is between this year and next year. And that's utilizing the April roll-up methodology. It's a very small number, but it hides what's happening with it. And you can see grade bands K through 5 is going to see some big changes in terms of enrollment. It's 105 student decrease. And I'll get to the building level in just a moment here too. That's primarily driven by a larger 5th grade class exiting than the kindergarten class that's coming in. 6 through 8, we're looking at a small increase, 26 FTE. Again, that's driven by the 5th grade exiting piece of age, Kent Prairie and Eagle Creek going to post. Haller is very stable in terms of enrollment. Post, we believe, is going to see an increase. And then 9 through 12, we're looking at a increase of 55 students across all of our high school grades. So that's at Arlington High School, Weston High School, and SVLC. So this is the summary level. This is the detail by grade. I'm going to go right to the schools. And the structure, the format of the table here, is by school, then by grade on the left-hand side. Our estimated annual average FTE for this year, and an estimate for annual average FTE for next year, again, based on the April roll-up methodology. And this is where you can see the changes happening. For example, the presidents, we're talking about a 29 student decrease between grades 4 and 5 for next year. The Pioneer, 22 student decrease at kindergarten level and grade 3. Eagle Creek, a 20 student decrease and a 12 student decrease and a 30 student decrease at grades 1, 2, and 5. Kent Prairie, a decrease of 15 and 10 and 23 and 10 at grades K and then 2 through 4. Now, these are offset partially by increases in other grade levels that are shown here as well. So the net effect is really most pronounced at Eagle Creek. Now, fingers crossed, we'll have some more kindergarten students show up. We're anticipating. We still have a pretty large kindergarten class. This is very meaningful to us in that we, in addition to reporting enrollment to the state, we also have a staffing test that we have to meet in grades K through 3. If we don't maintain our staffing above a certain level in relationship to the student population, then the state claws back money from us. They take a portion of the money back. So we have to be very close and monitoring the student population in grades K through 3. So that's elementary. And again, this is not inclusive of SVLC. There'll be a separate table just for that. Post, 46 student increase. Again, this is because of larger classes coming in from the 5th grade. The other grades are fairly stable. And then Howard, an 11 student increase. They don't have the same 5th grade transition from their feeder schools as Post does. So there's a slight decrease at grade 6, increase at grade 7 and 8. Arlington High School overall decline of 32 students. Again, we've got a gigantic freshman class. This is being replaced by a smaller freshman class. That's really the biggest effect there. We've also got large class sizes, or not large class size, but large classes in grades 10 and 11. They're offsetting in a decline in grade 9. In Weston, Weston can be very volatile throughout the year because they tend to grow in enrollment throughout the year. We're trying to counter the volatility of the school in terms of student enrollment with being as careful as we possibly can and not obligate ourselves to employment cost. One of the things that after tonight, Mr. Young is going to start preparing staffing spreadsheets based on the enrollment. And then we'll take into consideration natural changes that occur in staff levels like retirements or resignations to determine whether or not there's a need for formal action in terms of staff reduction. I'm not going to make any comment on that right now because that's going to be coming from Eric's office. SVLC overall a total decline of 21 students and Open Doors a projected decline of 11 students. Again, this is being as conservative as we possibly can in terms of anticipating enrollment. So what we're asking for your approval on is this number that's expressed in the median range, the 25, 26 April. It's also condensed, presented in a condensed version here. My goal is to re-engage with a demographer in 2026 and try to, well, not try, but refresh our demographic study that we conducted in 2020 just prior to COVID and see if there's any insight we can gain from that. Because right now, taking into account the trend line here with us, we're stable. And it looks like we'll have sufficient room in our school buildings to provide housing for the student population. So we're not anticipating building a new elementary school at this time. to absorb that new population. But things change, and we're gonna employ the demographers to help us understand what those changes might be. Yes.
Brian, do you work with the city at all on like layering what you're getting from the demographer versus what they use for their projections?
So their projections are provided by OFM, and the Office of Financial Management, which is a state agency.
Okay,
And our demographer looks at OFM numbers as a
Okay.
reference point. So again, they're following the same methodology that we are in terms of trying to generate 3 different scenarios, low, medium, and high. And they take the OSPI cohort survival and the OFM numbers, which feeds in the OSPI cohort survival as well. So we're not working directly with the city in terms of extract or asking for
Planning,
data
yeah.
or providing them data. They
Mhm.
they have asked for a demographic study and we have shared it with them.
Okay. Yeah, it just makes sense. I was talking to my husband and I was just wondering how that worked, and they'll like have a 20-year plan, but then they work on 10, what do we need in the next 10 years? But they look pretty far out. So even in that, the growth, it seems pretty steady. Yeah,
So what's countering that though is a decline in birth rates.
right. Excellent.
And what has saved us has been in-migration in excess of declining birth rates.
Okay.
And when I say save us, I'm putting a value on it. I don't necessarily mean to put a value on it. But everybody gets excited when we grow, when our student population grows, and gets kind of sad when we talk about decline or our stability. So that's why I use that word. But what we're seeing now is, the effect of that declining birth rate, it's not being overtaken by in-migration anymore.
Okay.
Otherwise, our kindergarten population would be steadily climbing.
Right. That's a good point. That's, yeah.
Yes.
Can you just refresh my memory? So you were saying there was a large 5th grade class going out, but then I thought I saw on one of the slides, like the Haller was going down. So that would be, if we were using like the weighted or.
No, that's
sorry.
April roll up,
Can you-
and it's students from Presidents and Pioneer that feed into Howard. And
Okay,
they are smaller
that
elementary
one's smaller.
schools.
Okay, thank you.
The cohort going
Good
in.
question.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's bigger than cool.
Have we seen any difference, like people that might, during the 21-22 school year pulled their kids out of school, maybe done homeschool? Do we see them returning in middle school and high school at the higher level of education?
We have
Are
not
we
done
tracking that type of
evaluation.
thing to see if they're coming back?
There
to
are
the
some,
system?
but we haven't done a full study.
Mhm.
We try to give them information about our SBLC.
Mhm.
There.
Yeah.
Want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask as many questions as they need. Director Diamond, do you have any questions before we move on to our?
No, I don't have any questions. I have a curiosity question. Just kind of, are we implementing Child Find to the best of our ability? But I'm sure you guys are, so that's why I wasn't going to ask it.
Yeah, the director of special education is saying, yes, we do.
Okay. Then no questions from me.
Thank you, Director Diamond. That was a good curiosity question. I like it. Robert, is there any other questions anyone would like to ask before we move on? This is a student advisor vote, so we'd love Nathan Nichols to weigh in with
Yeah.
your advisory vote and any thoughts or ponderings.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. I think it's really good to have the 2% guideline that we're trying to shoot in between, just because, well, actually, I was looking at that. I think 2% of how much is our enrollment, about 5,100, is still like 115 about. So that's decent from COVID at least. I think it also is very wise to meet with the demographer in 2026 because we're seeing a little bit of a steady 0.2 variation, but that came from the weighted average. So there might be changes within the next 3 years that might not be expected. So I think that's a good idea. I also find it really interesting being a student, who's involved in, the higher levels of education in the classroom, like AP classes, in which it feels, less packed, but then I go to my regular classroom, and it's like 40 kids in one classroom sometimes. So it's an interesting dynamic, seeing how it relates to the graphs that you presented. Thank you. I also think that might be a little indirectly affected, by the, students not wanting to go to college and pursue a little bit of a higher education. That could be because of the, growing cost, or the belief that college just isn't as valuable as it once was. So then we see kids not filling in these, AP classrooms. So that might, I don't know if that changes anything, but it's a good perspective to have, to notice like, a lot of classrooms are being filled up by students not wanting to pursue anything more.
And there's a relationship between the classes that they're required to take
Oh, yeah,
versus elective classes like AP classes.
right.
Those are, for high achievers and are dedicated students. They don't require the same level of effort as a non-AP class. So they are elective in nature. Carrie, can you help me answer a question here in terms of the credit requirements met by the classes for graduation?
Yes, they can.
It's a good time to share it.
Oh, it might be valuable to look at, more of the gym classes, like we had, Mr. Hunter come in, present to the board. I think that was very needed. And ways in which we can balance more students across all the PE classes. Maybe try to make it more appealing, say if a child wanted to do weight training, but was more inclined to do rec PE. How to meet the kids' need and say, okay, well, you should do this because of, and that could, we could do that by. My first thought is just going into the course catalog and providing more information. I think incoming freshmen don't really know what a class is about, so that could be something to take a look at with Marley Herman. But that could be for a different. With that being said, I would vote yes. This is. You do great work, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Student Advisor Nichols. It's time, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to adopt the recommended 2025, 2026 projected student enrollment as presented?
Make a motion that we approve the recommended enrollment 2025-2026 school year.
I second.
It's been moved by Director Knapp and seconded by Director Kelly to adopt the recommended student enrollment as presented for 2025-2026. Is there any discussion? Can we take a Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts?
Yes.
President Levesque? Yes. Director Knapp? Yes. Okay, the student enrollment proposal is adopted as presented. Thank you, Brian, for putting so much time and attention into that. We know that is how everything gets started with the planning for next year. So thank you very much. Next up is our first reading of board policies 21-24 physical education and health class, 6605 student safety walking, biking, and riding classes to school, and 6220 bid or request for proposal requirements. And I would like to welcome our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Carrie Henderson Burke.
Thank you so much. This is one of the 4 policies that are coming your way that WASDA creatively described as being detangled, right? So the original policy was gargantuan and it included recess and physical activity, wellness, nutrition, and PE and health. So this is a new policy, but no new wording. So about requirements for PE and health in our schools.
And the next one, 6605, the student safety walking, and then 6220 bid or request for foreclosure permits. That one is going to be presented by Brian Lewis.
I'm gonna ask Gina to join me for 6620.
Okay.
Okay, 6605 is regarding student safety, walking, biking, and riding buses to school. This is primarily discussed, the primary purpose of this policy is to talk about bus safety, emergencies, student conduct on buses. They're very small changes to the policy itself. The Safe Routes to School plan also does have a change, and the change there is discussing about the design plans so that students move in groups through crossings. And that the walking route plan should be distributed to all students. It should be available on our website. These are not something that changes a whole lot once they're established.
We already do all these things anyway. We have a walking route for every building.
Yeah, the roads around the school buildings do not change a whole lot. Sometimes there are additions. At that point, we would formulate the route. So yes, they should be available on the school buildings website. So. Okay, so that's 6605. 6620 is regarding bids, bidding environment for construction services and other types of purchases. I think the biggest change here, at least in terms of bidding, it centers around the small works roster. It increases the level of the cost of a project that can be bid through a small works roster versus a competitive bidding process. Excuse me, we are members of the Municipal Services Research Center small works roster. We pay $100 a year to be on this roster. They take care of advertising our presence on the roster, and we get access to not necessarily pre-approved vendors, but vendors who meet all the requirements for bidding on a school district job or a public job. Like they're in compliance with State Department of Revenue rules, the L&I rules. They carry the required amount of liability insurance. So we don't, we have to ask for those things when we make a contract, but we know that if we were to select a vendor off of the roster, that they've got these things. We don't have to waste time in backtracking. One time we could find out that they don't have them. So there is also a description of outreach to minorities and women-owned business enterprises. Our contracts all reference the RCW that describes the opportunities that are available to these types of businesses. And we do have an obligation to make sure that we're performing outreach under this policy now to try to locate. And I'm going to use the term, the MWPE is the abbreviation. So the next major change is in terms of interlocal cooperative purchases, and that for that I'm going to turn to Gina.
All right.
Sorry, I'm surprised.
So I will also say that these policies, this one in particular, has been updated and looked over by legal at WASDA a lot over the past years. So sometimes the changes they're making, they're just rearranging the flow of where it's appearing. And one of the areas that has undergone changes is that Interlocal Cooperation Act area. And when we do that, it's basically what they would call piggybacking, potentially, where you would piggyback on another entity's bidding process. And so they're very explicit about how you maintain compliance with it when you're using another entity's bidding process, and you have an interlocal agreement with them in order to do that. So we just make sure that our policy is up to date and reflective of the most recent practices. And that only really comes into play if you're making large purchases that require sealed bids.
Hmm.
So, and or you can utilize them with your checking quotes, things like that, so. All of a sudden, I don't remember seeing this policy, like I know I did, I signed off. Yeah. As you can see, if you're reading that, there's a lot of requirements around what you have to do when you're utilizing in a local cooperative agreement and also related to advertising. Advertising the goods, yeah. Yep.
Just like a curiosity, how do we find out who we are hiring? You know,
Who
because
do we
there's
have
an
hiring?
emphasis I see it in here a few times, you know, women and minority owned
Oh.
businesses. How do we find out that information?
Yeah,
There's a statement that can be completed by the bidder.
Okay,
It says they meet that description, that threshold.
okay, but then how, like, do we have any data on like, if we are like, the demographics of who we have?
So our requirement is to only make the opportunity available. It's
Right.
not to select the
To track,
NWPE
right,
business. Or the overriding factor in terms of bid is the lowest responsive bidder.
right,
So that'd be the lowest cost, plus their ducks are in a row, business wise, they've got insurance, they haven't been, they're not embroiled in any kind of legal action. They can provide a bond. So those are the factors that we must comply with.
right,
And if they happen to be an MWPE type of entity, then that's all the better for them.
Mhm.
We're not required to purchase from them, we're required to
Right.
purchase from the lowest cost bidder.
I'm just curious who like, you know, if that is successful. Our, you know.
It really comes into play more at the state contracting level.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or the city. Than it does, it's a local school district level.
For sure, okay.
Any other questions about any of these, the policies that are for first reading?
No.
Any suggested changes? All right, thank you. Thank you for going through all the policies with a fine tooth comb and balancing all of our legal needs. We appreciate that. Next up is our second reading and adoption of board policy 3241. Discipline. Dr. Sweden.
Yeah, and since we had discussion first reading and when Ms. Ray, Director of Student Wellbeing, Ferguson, there was something that some moving of information into the procedure, and there were no other suggested changes since the first reading.
Anybody have any questions or suggested changes? Or do we have a motion to approve for second reading adoption board policy 3241 discipline?
Make a motion to approve second reading and adoption of board policy 3241. A second.
It's been moved by Director Watts and seconded by Director Kelly to approve for second reading and adoption board policy 3241 discipline. Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Aye.
President Novak,
Yes.
Director Natalie.
Yes. That policy 3241 is approved as presented. Next is our second reading and adoption of board policy 3420, anaphylaxis prevention and response. And we're ready to welcome Dave McKellar, Director.
Directors, hello, good evening. Our second reading for the anaphylaxis prevention and response. These are EpiPens in schools that we have on standby, should they be needed.
And this one didn't have any suggested changes at our last reading. Any further discussion, question? Do we have a motion to approve for second reading adoption for policy 3420? Anaphylaxis prevention and response.
Make a motion, we approve board policy 3420.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve board policy 3420. Madam Clerk.
Director Diamond,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque,
Yes.
Director Dan.
Yes. Thank you, Dave McKellar.
Thank you.
Next up is our second reading and adoption of board policy 6600, transportation. Welcome back, Brian.
Okay, so there's a couple of small RCW changes expressed, but the biggest change is the addition of school bus trespass and the description of it as a gross misdemeanor and what constitutes school bus trespass. It also makes it incumbent upon us to provide education to the community and students about preventing crime and being safe on school buses, or security, I guess, not necessarily preventing crime, but being more secure and safe on school buses. Our bus drivers are very good with this. They do not let adults that have not, that are not part of the school system, like a staff member, an SRO on the school bus, very vigilant and making sure this doesn't happen. This policy change came about because a bus driver was stabbed to death in Pasco 3 years ago. So this is super meaningful to us. And I do, at least once a year, have to have a discussion with the disgruntled parent regarding their presence on the school bus and interfering with the school bus. So this is very happy to have another tool in that regard.
I have one question. You have that little sentence about affixing placards. If we receive funds, how much would it cost to put a placard on every bus?
Not so sure that cost is the problem here. What I am sure of is the Washington State Patrol and their school bus safety checks. I'm not clear that that the state legislature consulted with the federal school bus safety manual in terms of what can be allowed on a school bus and what cannot be allowed on the school bus. Generally, the state patrol is any kind of placard, poster, or anything like that inside of the school bus. It can result in us being, when they do an inspection, and the bus being placed out of service. So when I get assurance that they're not going to do that, and I may be
Might
more
need to
interested
amend the
in
policy later.
utilizing this. And I got back in, because the way the policy is written, it says it will mandates, it will consider, but it will fix placards. So I recommend that we remove that.
Remove that whole sentence or the word will? May. What if we changed it? Will affix placards?
Yeah, I would recommend
May.
that we remove that sentence. It's not there.
The bottom sentence, if the district receives funds to do so.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that one I would recommend removing.
So this is second reading? This is the second reading. You can change things.
Yeah, I think it locks you in. It's probably better to have an option.
It says if we have the funds to do so,
We don't have any funds. We just heard.
And transportation, unfortunately, is one of those spaces where we're spending more than what we receive. Just by way of information, it's primarily due to special education, transportation, and McKinney Vento transportation and foster student transportation as well. We don't get any reimbursement for that. We're required to perform that.
Can I make a motion to amend the board policy and approve it as amended?
Well, we can, but we had two conflicting things. One, we don't have the money, so it's not an issue. And then I heard that we want it all gone.
I think we
What
want it
is
all
there?
gone.
Yeah, just struck.
All the way from if to.
Just
Have to visible.
pass it up.
Placard sentence.
The whole sentence.
Yeah, when we review it again, there could be some, it would be a good mention to pause to check that out too, as far as.
And when the state patrol comes in June, we'll talk with them and ask them, what's your point of view on this? You're gonna give us
So the
a
policy would
service or what?
still be in effect if there's going to be a sign.
Yeah, all these other factors are still in effect, not just placing the placard on the bus. So we'll start with our bus drivers and make sure that they're aware and what a school bus trespass is and start working on a communication campaign with the community and students as well.
Is there anyone that would like to make a motion to approve the board policy 6600 with that one amendment?
I recommend we approve second reading and adoption of board policy 6600 transportation. Amended.
Director Kelly moved to approve second reading adoption of 67 and Nicole Watts seconded. Okay, Director Diamond,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yes.
President Levesque. Yes. Director Knapp.
Yes.
6600 is approved with that last little
Thank you.
part edited out. Thank you, Brian. Next up is our second reading adoption of board policy 6701 recess and physical activity and 6702 wellness. Recess is always my favorite. We'd like to welcome Carrie Anderson.
Thank you so much. And what I've said before is what I'll say again. This is the sprawling policy. Detailed, manageable components.
Does anyone have any changes to either one of these two policies before we take action? Do I have a motion to approve 6701 recess and physical activity and 6702 wellness?
Make a motion, we approve policy 6701 and 6702.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Director Knapp and seconded by Director Watts to approve board policy 6701 recess and physical activity and 6702 wellness. Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Watts,
Yay.
President Levesque. Yay. Director Knapp.
Yay.
Those two policies, 6701 recess and physical activity and 6702 wellness are approved as presented. Thank you very much. That concludes our new business portion of our meeting, and now we get to move into our informational items. I'd like to start with our superintendent's report. Dr. Sweeting.
So today was a no school day for students because staff were busy having a work day for grading and such things like that. Because a new semester will be starting very soon. I want to thank everybody who attended the public forum for the board and either on Zoom or in person. So thank you very much, those that are listening. And I want to thank the board for their service. This is towards the end of the month where we're gonna formally appreciating the board, a school board appreciation month. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to thank Howard for the special bag of goodies that they gave us at the last board meeting. And then tonight we got the special goodies from Post Middle School and the cookies. So thank you, everybody.
Next up is our legislative update and discussion. Director Kelly.
Just as I shared in our study session that, yeah, the legislators are in the thick of it, getting this in session, from our president-elect Melissa Beard, why MSOC is a priority. It's nice that she just kind of extracted that portion and just kind of like the focus to be, if you're talking to legislatures, give them really the nuts and bolts. Because numbers obviously speak volumes, and you're talking about, again, how are we affected? That's what I thought was interesting. I didn't remember the specifics of, I know we have an overview of the funds and where they're going on a budget standpoint, but we talked earlier about, like, is it insurance? Is it, what is the cost of fuel? Those are things that, and I think it's also just good for us, even as citizens. We had our forum last week, and it really having that understanding, you can dispel some of the myths or misunderstandings in the public and just kindly educate them on what it costs to run a school. People don't. And we're learning, right? We're learning how that shift pivots. So great talking points on that. But that's just it, just kind of keeping up on, there's so many meetings. I'm not going to give you the details of all the things, but I thought it was also insightful when you shared, I think, Dr. Sweeting, we talked about the people who were speaking pro and con. And that also provides insight on. I just kind of assume everybody supports kids, but it's a lens on, are you being prudent with money and budget? And so that's fair, but I'm just, I'm always in it for the kids. So anyway, if there's anything coming up this week, I'll certainly share that with in our next meeting. That's all.
Thank you, Director Kelly. The next up is our comments from board members. I'd like to start with our student advisor, Nick Rose. Do you have any thoughts or updates you want to share?
No, it's right now. Excited to start the fall semester.
All right, thank you. Director Nat, do you want to share anything?
Sure. I mean, I kind of want to echo what Dr. Sweeting said about thanking everybody who came to the forum and being willing to engage in those conversations. It's tough, and I think it is a little shocking. We were talking about some slides earlier and how much things have increased, how much, insurance costs have increased, but the state support for schools not changed. So that was really an eye opener. And yeah, just the ongoing informational effort sharing. It's been really great to go to, TSA meetings and different meetings as a school board member and to share some of this information. Really happy to do that. And what's coming up for me is tomorrow I'm going to go to Camp Prairie and read part of The One and Only Ivan, because they're doing their one book, one school. So it's been really fun to read that book again to kind of refresh my memory. Going to the unified basketball game. So everybody's invited. Let's pack the gym. And then this weekend is the Eagle Festival. So any artwork, nature photos, haiku. I encourage all of the youth to enter something. It's really a lot of fun. So, and I'll be doing youth crafts just personally, not as a board member, but in City Hall in the morning. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Director Diamond, do you have anything you'd like to share with us tonight?
Not this week. I will be back in person for the next board meeting. So yeah, nothing this week.
Thank you. Director Watson.
We had the pleasure, Mary and myself and Dr. Sweeting go to Howler on Friday to do student voices. And my goodness, were they so smart. And one is going to be an amazing lawyer, I think. She was giving quite the argument for Sophronia. So, but it was very fun and they were very engaging and really interactive. Well, I was quite impressed. Middle school is so rough sometimes. So super great. And then just was kind of thinking back. I've been in this role now for 6 months. So very exciting this month. So, what a great month.
We'll benchmark.
Yeah, but
I feel like you know
it's a joy. No. Not at all.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Kelly, anything else you'd like to share with us tonight?
Not too much. I'm good.
Thank you. I want to share that, yes, Howler was super fun. And also Friday night, I got to go to the boys and girls basketball games and watch those amazing kids and hear the amazing band. And it was just really great how our community comes and supports. It's not just parents in the audience, but there's lots of people from just our community and how much they support our students and our schools. And it's very reassuring. And then I'm excited to have that unified basketball game on Friday. I think it's Friday. I'm excited about that too. So lots of things to celebrate, lots of good stuff going on. Happy for the next semester to be starting and have a clean slate for a lot of our students that might have been struggling a little bit. Hopefully they can harness all of that energy and enthusiasm and anxiety and make it count for the rest of the school year. It's been a great week, and thank you for allowing me to go on vacation 2 weeks ago and getting through the last meeting with me on Zoom. Appreciate that. I had a great time. Next, I want to remind everybody about our next meeting. It's in a couple weeks on February 10th at 6:00 p.m. right here in the district office boardroom. And if there is nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Person.
I'll second. Okay, so that was moved by Director Diamond and seconded by Director Knapp to adjourn the meeting. Director Diamond?
Aye.
Director Kelly?
Yay.
Director Watts? Aye. President Levesque? Aye. Director Knapp?
Aye.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.